What's up, y'all? Thank you for coming to my channel. My name is Essence China, and I want to talk to you about 5 keys to discovering purpose. Now, this is the 5 keys that help me to discover purpose, as well as hopefully they'll be able to help you. Let's get right into it. So the very first key, because we're going to get right into it, I ain't going to waste no time. The very first key was following and pursuing my passion. Now, this wasn't technically me being in purpose or on purpose, but it was me learning that I loved hair. Now, many of you who may not know me, and this may be your first introduction to me, I have been a natural hairstylist for over 30 plus years. I've owned multiple salons. I've traveled the world and taught hairstylists, but I never would have thought that learning how to braid hair at 8, 9, 10 years old would lead me to this. But I continued to pursue that passion because I found myself always being just fulfilled when I did it. Right. And so I started doing hair when I was in officially, like my mother allowed me to open like a salon suite in our home. And it was literally just our laundry room that I turned into a salon. And I just continued to do it because I loved it. Now, I didn't know that it was going to lead to this lifelong career, but it really did. And so a lot of times we don't recognize that the small things or the things that really draw us are the things that literally are going to be the pathway to our purpose. And sometimes us as creatives, we think that because we don't see a future in that, or we don't see that there can be it can be profitable in that, or we don't even see the way in that, we don't pursue it, and we don't even realize that we're actually cutting ourselves off from our potential purpose. So the number one key is following and pursuing passion, because through passion you're going to potentially find your purpose. The number two key is surrender. Now, I know that word may be hard to, what I'm saying, but surrender is so important. Let me explain to you. So when I turned 20, I moved to Maryland. And while I was in Maryland, I was still doing hair, but I wasn't really quite sure if this was what I was supposed to do, right? But I kept coming back to it because it was stable and it was something I could do with my hands. And so it was just something that I was very comfortable with. At the same time, I was trying to go the conventional route. I went to school. I tried to do all the things that I was told to do, go to school, you know what I mean? Like, get a degree and go get a job. And so I find myself in school, but I also don't find myself fulfilled. And there came a point in time when I realized that I was going in debt, pretty much trying to follow like a career path that I wasn't even aligned with. I didn't even feel the fulfillment in it. At this point, I had so many credits that I was just like, okay, let me just put it to whatever makes the most sense because I didn't spent so much time in school, right? But I was just like, I'm going in debt just to do this, just to go become an air traffic controller. Now, mind you, I'm not knocking being an air traffic controller, but that was nothing that I had any interest in. It just was like, oh, this job pays X amount of money per year. Let me go ahead and go this path because my credits can go towards it. And it was like in that time frame, I felt like God literally was just like getting me very agitated within my spirit because I was veering off. And he was like, listen, I already put this passion with you. Like, I'm trying to get you on this path, but you're so conditioned in the way that society has taught you that you're trying to go this direction. And so I ended up leaving school for that semester. I was at Hampton University. I left school and I ended up doing hair full time, but I still hadn't chose it. So I remember this particular year was the worst, and I felt like at the time, the worst year of my life. I think I was 21 or 22. And I remember just going through like a series of just hardships. And I didn't understand what was going on. I remember there was one point in my life where I was bruising all over my body spontaneously. I didn't know what was going on. I was living with a friend and I had got kicked out the day after I purchased my car cash. I had this guy I was dealing with. He didn't steal my clothes. I went to go wash clothes at his house and he never returned my clothes. I kept on trying to get a hold of him. I could not get a hold of him. And by the time I did get my clothes back, it was months later. And so there were all these just random like things that were happening throughout my year. And I remember like talking to my brother, and I was like, I don't understand what is going on. And he was like, China, you just need to pray. And at that time, though I had grown up in church, praying wasn't anything that necessarily like came to my mind as being the thing to do. And so that particular night, literally after I got the phone with him, I got on my knees and I prayed, and I was like, God, I really feel like I'm going in the wrong direction. Like I didn't understand how I even knew that. I just knew that everything was going wrong, right? And I was looking for things to go right. And so I pretty much prayed the prayer that I didn't even know was the prayer of salvation. I just said, I don't know what to do. I need you to lead me. I need you to guide me. I surrender it all. Like whatever it takes. I can stop smoking. I can stop drinking. I can stop having premarital sex. Like I was just telling him, like, listen, I give it up. The only thing I'm gonna have an issue with is my music, because I love me some Biggie. I love me some music. Like, and so I prayed a sincere prayer. It was from my heart, and I didn't even know I was gonna be heard. Not to that degree. When I tell you I woke up that next morning and I felt brand new, I felt like something had completely changed. And from that point on, I began to hear instructions. And those instructions were telling me what to do. Do this, go here. And so at that point in time, I heard God say, go back to Arizona. So mind you, this point is about surrender. I surrendered it all. I was like, I clearly don't know what's best for me. You know what's best. And so I'm asking you to take the wheel. I'm asking you to take the wheel. And some of us, we may have had those points in our lives, but then we end up taking the wheel back. And sometimes when we feel that we're out of alignment and we're not in purpose, it's because we haven't necessarily completely surrendered it all. Or somehow or another, we done took it back. And so surrender is point number 2. Point number 3 is obedience. So as I begin to hear these instructions, the hardest thing for me to receive and to even obey was to move back to Arizona, because I loved Maryland. And by this time, I had been walking with the Lord for close to a year. Things were going good for me. I mean, my clientele is popping, right? So I'm doing hair out of a barbershop in Maryland and a hair salon. I didn't have room for more clients. That's how good it was. And I end up saying, okay, God, you want me to move back to Arizona to do what? Because it doesn't even make sense. And so a lot of times when God is trying to put us on the path to purpose, much of what he's telling us to do ain't going to make sense, because his ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. And so high is the heaven above the earth, so high are his ways above our ways and his thoughts above our thoughts. So when he begins to give us instruction and direction, it's going to throw you off in your natural mind. And so I had to obey it even though I didn't want to. I kept hearing the word so much. Now, mind you, we're talking about how to get on the path to purpose, how to discover purpose. It's going to come through the first finding the passion, then going into the surrender and the obedience. And so I said, okay, God, I'm going to go back to Arizona for a year. I was like, if it don't pop off in a year, I'm out. Now, I didn't realize that I shouldn't be talking in that way. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't realize, like, he's just like, little girl, come on and let's go. So I packed up my car, drove cross country from Maryland to Phoenix, moved back with my mother. And I'm like, all right, now what? Now what? And so for those of you who may know my story, some of you may not. When I moved back to Arizona, and because I did natural hair, and the population of Black people in Phoenix is less than 6%. And we talking, this is early 2000s. And I knew that I wanted to do hair, but I didn't really see how I could. And the law was such that you had to have a license in order to do natural hair, or any type of hair, excuse me. In order to do any type of hair, you had to have a license. You had to go to cosmetology school. And in my mind, I'm like, I do braids, I do locks, I do twists. They don't teach any of these things. You know what I mean? They don't teach the creativity, and the things that I may need to learn, I can learn in a textbook. I can teach myself. You know what I mean? The professionalism side, the sanitation side, like I can do that for myself. And so I called the state board, because God led me to call the state board These are the instructions. So I called them and I told them what I did, and they pretty much told me like, yes, you need to have a license. And so after I got off the phone, I just had I was frustrated because I was just like, well, I don't know how this is going to work, God. And then he led me. He told me to look for a law firm. And so in order for us to get on the path to purpose, we have to be in a place of submission so we can hear. We have to be in a place where we are aligned with what he's saying and doing, because come on now, let's think about it from this perspective. If the one who created us by, for, and in a purpose, then how else do we think we're going to find out why we're here other than to get it from the source? So having this relationship to where it's not just long distance, I actually hear you. We actually talk. I'm actually talking back. We're having a conversation and I'm submitted to what you're saying. And so I called the state board and not the state board, start looking for law firms. And I ran into about 3 law firms. And by the 3rd law firm I came across, I had a meeting with a lawyer. And this was the Institute for Justice. And he came and met me at my mother's house. And I told him my story and he was like, okay, let's go. So he filed Essence Pharma versus the State Board of Cosmetology on my behalf. I moved back in August. By December, I'm fighting the state board. I'm 23 years old at the time. I hadn't been home but for a few months, and God has me moving and shaking. And so I often wonder, like, where would I have been had I not followed the instructions? I literally felt in alignment. I literally felt in purpose. And so we're looking for purpose, but we don't really realize so much of it is the Bible even says the kingdom of God is within. And so all of who we are, all of we've been created to do, it's already inside of you. But it takes the unlocking, it takes the discovering, it takes the understanding of who God created you to be to tap into that. So these are the things that we have to be aware of as it pertains to discovering purpose. The 4th key I'm going to talk about, I don't know which one. Well, they're not in any kind of order, but the 4th thing I'm going to talk about is having the faith. Having the faith, because without faith, it is impossible to please God. Without faith, how are we going to move and do mighty works if we're scared? So in order to discover your purpose, you have to also discover some courage. You also have to discover some strength. You also have to discover things about yourself that's kind of goes into that next step, which is the awareness. But we have to have the faith. Because had I not moved back, it took faith to move back because I didn't see it. Even though I heard it, I didn't see it. And we're the type of people that, we want to see things. And many times they're not going to be shown in that way. God will give you a vision in your heart. He'll give you a vision in your mind, but it will not necessarily come into fruition until you walk it out. The just shall live by faith. We walk by faith and not by sight. And so you're going to have faith in order to literally pursue purpose. We can't do it afraid. I mean, we're going to have a degree of, I don't know, uncertainty, and that comes with the territory. I think so many people, and even myself, we're so fearful of falling. We're so fearful of things not working in the way that they could, but we don't even realize that. Why are we not thinking about what it could be in the positive? So back to the key. We have to have faith. If we need to start exercising that faith, start taking small steps, God is going to give you some smaller things to do, and just do it. It's because we have to build on that. And the last thing I'm going to say is awareness. Another key to discovering purpose is awareness. Sometimes we need to get still and we need to get a notebook and we need to start asking ourselves, what am I good at? What do I like? What do I enjoy? What brings me just ultimate fulfillment? It's crazy how in purpose it'll continue to unfold. A lot of people think they're not in purpose because there's not this grand crescendo. And it's like, no, you're in purpose on like it's a journey. And so throughout that journey, things are going to evolve. I'm at a different part of my process. I went from being a hairstylist to a multiple salon owner to an educator traveling the world teaching hairstylists to now becoming a speaker and empowering people. I didn't realize that this was a gift that I had years ago. But then as I began to speak to people, God started making me aware because of what the feedback I was getting. They were like, yo, will you talk? Something just charges me. And I realized that not only were they charged, I was charged when I told them. Like, there's just a level of excitement when you're in oneness, when you're in alignment with what you've been created to do. So we have to become aware. And a lot of times that awareness will come from people recognizing certain things about you. When you start noticing that you keep hearing the same thing about yourself, you need to go ahead and jot that down on a piece of paper. You need to say, okay, God, what does this mean? Because you got to think about it. Sometimes, and probably more times than not, we don't see ourselves. We're not looking in the mirror all day long. We're not observing our habits, our patterns, our behaviors, but there are other people that are interacting with us that are observing these things just by nature, and they see you. Oftentimes more than you see yourself. And so what we have to do is pray and ask God, Lord, give me a revelation of who you've created me to be. Help me to see it so I can walk in the authority of it, so I can walk in the truth of it. So I'm not hiding, I'm not fearful, I'm not acting as if I don't know. Many of you already know, like the discovery, sometimes it's not even so much that we need to discover it, it's that we wish that it wasn't so hard to pursue it. But that's a whole nother video. So in recap, start finding out what you're passionate about and start pursuing that. Surrender unto God. Obey his commands. Walk by faith and ask God to make you aware of who he created you to be. If you do those 5 things, there is no reason that you will not discover your purpose. I thank you all for watching my video. I look forward to seeing you again. And I hope that you actually apply some of these steps and move forward in your purpose, because your purpose is not just for you, it's for others. And the more that you wake up and see who he's created you to be, the more that you can be an asset to the people he's called you to, the people that he's assigned you to. So I'm grateful for you watching this video. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you next week. Peace.